Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Why did you choose this video? Because YouTube recommended it? But YouTube recommends many videos. Yet you chose this one. Perhaps there is a force guiding you to watch this video. Today we're here to talk about a book, Conversations with God. This book was published in 1996 and has sold over 15 million copies worldwide. According to the author, the book records his conversations with God. Neale Donald Walsch was born in 1943 and dropped out of school at the age of 19 to work at a radio station, eventually becoming a somewhat famous journalist. Later, he founded a public relations company and his life became affluent. And by chance, he entered into 4 marriages. However, just as he started to lead a life that others envied, a sudden car accident plunged him into hell. Although he survived the car accident, it took him over a year to gradually recover. At this point, his public relations company had already closed down, his wife had divorced him, he had moved out of his luxury home, slept in a park, and barely made a living by collecting beverage cans for meager money. After some time, he found a job at a radio station. Although he no longer had to sleep on the streets, with 4 marriages behind him and 9 children to support, the financial pressure was immense. Additionally, the health issues stemming from the accident made him feel increasingly overwhelmed. On that day, he picked up a pen and wrote down all his grievances with life on paper. He only asked God, "Why is my life such a failure? Why am I so unhappy? What have I done wrong to end up living in poverty and despair? Is this my fate? Will I be poor for the rest of my life?" He then wrote down all sorts of harsh words, cursing God, until the moment he could no longer write. He decided to throw away the pen. "I want to throw away the pen. I want to throw it away." At that moment, Neale realized that not only was the pen still in his hand, but it had even written a sentence. Do you really want to know the answer? But I don't know if everyone has ever thought about this like I have. If God truly exists, why do tragedies happen? If tragedies exist, doesn't that contradict the existence of God? However, Neale answered this question for me. He said that it is precisely because God exists that tragedies occur. It's not just tragedies. According to Neale, all the misfortunes in this world, all the bad things and bad people, happen with God's permission. And this wasn't Neale speaking, it was God speaking directly to him. When Neale, in his bitterness, wrote a bunch of curses against God, God responded to Neale for the first time. Neale said that he found himself not only unable to put down the pen but also unconsciously writing a series of words. Do you really want to know the answers to all your questions? Or are you just venting? Neale stood there, stunned. He blinked, then wrote, "Both. I am venting, but at the same time, I also want to know the answers to my questions. For this, I am even willing to go to hell." Just as Neale had finished writing, the next moment, his hand involuntarily started writing again. This is known as automatic writing. In Japan, there was a prophet who also experienced automatic writing. His hands unconsciously wrote a series of prophecies. However, Neale's case is very unique. He would write down questions, and then God would control his hand through automatic writing to write down the answers. Neale once doubted whether there was something wrong with his own mind. So, he asked God, "How can I know that I am conversing with God right now and not just my own imagination?" God replied, "Can you come up with the answers to these questions on your own? If you truly understand, do you still need to ask me?" Wow, doesn't everyone find God's speech very sharp? Neale, a little disgruntled, said after hearing this, "If you are not a figment of my imagination, why don't you just appear in front of me?" God replied, "I am already in front of you, in every place your eyes can see. Everything you see and hear in front of you is me. I have appeared in forms that you can understand before, but I rarely do so now because people would think that's what God looks like, but that is just one aspect of me. Here, God explains why the gods in many religions look different and why the gods seen in many near-death experiences may have different appearances because sometimes God appears in a way that people can accept. But none of these are what God looks like because God does not have a fixed form." Neale, after hearing this, was quite indifferent. He still believed it was his illusion, so he continued to vent his anger. If you truly exist, why haven't any of the things I've prayed for over the years come true? God said, many people ask me this question, and I have answered each time. Now I will answer once again. True prayer is never a plea but a prayer of gratitude. God's point is that when you pray to God for something, like, please bless me with wealth, your mindset is emphasizing and telling yourself, I don't have money. Therefore, any decision you make is a decision made by someone who has no money. Because it is deeply ingrained in your thinking, in your behavior, so you will never have money. However, if you shift your prayer to gratitude, for example, saying to God, thank you for making me so wealthy, it will manifest as if it has already been achieved. This mindset can help attract it into your reality. It's a bit like when you keep complaining about why things are going so badly recently, usually, it just gets worse. This is the so-called law of attraction. Upon hearing this, Neil continued to argue, saying, it's easy for you to say. I've tried that before, but it didn't work. God said, grateful prayers are not tools to manipulate God. If you already feel that something won't come true while praying, how can you expect God to be more foolish than you and create something that is impossible to happen just because of your gratitude? Wow. So, our wishes have not been fulfilled all along, not just because we have been using the wrong method, but fundamentally because we foolishly think that God is dumber than us. God continued, I am an observer, not a creator. Yes, I created the world, created you all, but after creating the world, I became an observer. The rest is all created by you because I have given you the freedom of choice, and your way of life is entirely your own choice. However, when you make wrong choices, I will timely remind you through communication. This is how I respond to your prayers. Everyone should listen carefully because this part is crucial. In the end, everyone will discover that God is not just talking to Neil. He has actually been talking to all of us all along. God said, the most common way I communicate is through feelings, followed by thought experiences, and lastly, words. If you have ever been making a decision, for example, whether to make a certain investment or go on a trip, and all signs indicate that it is a safe decision, but for some reason, an illogical sixth sense rushes into your mind, telling you not to make that decision. Many people do not listen to the voice within, so I will continue to communicate with you through experiences. If it is an investment, you will taste the experience of failure. If it is an accident, afterward, you will understand the importance of caution. However, most of the time, people will continue to ignore my experiential communication, so ultimately, I will resort to words. In other words, the book, Conversations with God, is the final communication method that God adopts. So, why are words God's final choice? Because words are the easiest to misunderstand. The same words can evoke different feelings in different people. Even though this time God used words. Neil emphasized the importance of everyone using their hearts to feel, because feelings are the common language of the soul. As long as you listen with your heart, you will know whether everything is true or false. Right or wrong, feelings are like a lighthouse, they can guide you in the right direction. So, with a mixture of belief and doubt, Neil began to feel. During the process of feeling, he gained insight into the reason God created demons. In several conversations, Neil gradually began to believe that he might really be conversing with God. Then, he asked God a question that humans often like to ask: why did God create humans? God's answer in the first half is quite similar to what we discussed earlier. Because God wanted to experience the world by creating humans and splitting into countless souls infused into human bodies. But the difference this time is that God also answered why he wanted us to forget that we were once a part of God. God said, before the Big Bang, God was both the great ultimate and the great void. Everything was a unified existence. However, the entire world, the entire space, was God himself. How could he experience it? It's like being under full-body anesthesia. All your senses are shut off. Even though you exist, you can't feel any sensations at all. Moreover, God doesn't even have a body. So, in order to feel and realize himself, God created relativity. At the moment of the Big Bang, God separated his great ultimate and great void, giving birth to all things from infinite nothingness, ultimately splitting himself. In this grand plan, there is a very crucial step. God said, I created you, my spiritual descendants, so that I could know and experience, I am God, through you. But in order to realize that you are God, you must first forget that you are God. Imagine this. If you were born with everything, never worrying about food or clothing, you wouldn't understand what it means to be wealthy. You might even think that having meat for every meal, air conditioning, and hot showers are all just normal things. But if you were born in a very poor place, you would understand the feeling of not having money and realize that these things are very precious luxuries. Therefore, to truly be aware of and perceive something, you must first lose it. Only after losing something can a person truly appreciate its existence and value. That's why God says, in order to realize that you are God, you must first forget that you are God. Here, God tells a true story that happened. God said, when I first split countless souls from myself, there was a little soul that caught my attention. It had just realized that it was light and was very excited, going around saying, I am light, I am light. But soon, it discovered that the souls around it were also shining, and the entire space was filled with endless light. In this incomparable radiance, the light of the little soul was so faint, almost indiscernible, making it unable to recognize itself. It couldn't even see itself. I sensed its strong desire to know itself, so I asked, do you know what you need to do to fulfill this desire? The little soul asked, what do I need to do? You must leave us and enter the darkness, I replied. The little soul, a bit confused, asked, darkness? What is darkness? God said, darkness is not you, an existence different from you. The little soul understood, eagerly agreed, and entered the darkness. One day, the little soul suddenly cried, saying, God, why have you abandoned me? Hearing this story, Neil also had a moment of realization. At this moment, he finally understood that we choose to enter the world because, like God, we want to experience the world. However, the most shocking is that God actually admits that he created demons. As mentioned earlier, after creating the world, God became an observer and gave us the power of creation. It is worth noting that this creation is not a creation out of nothing, it is a choice. God said, I will never deprive you of the ability to choose, because choice is a form of creation. When you choose to live seriously, you create a fulfilling life. If you choose laziness, you create a decadent life. And both of these lives are equally important to God because through choice, God feels and experiences two completely different processes. And that's why there are demons in the world, because God knows. To understand what pure love is, you must allow something that is the complete opposite of love to exist. So God created things that are opposite to love. Such as fear, pain, sadness, even demons, are all created with God's permission. Let's not rush. Don't accuse me of blasphemy, let God finish speaking first. God said, only with the existence of demons, we can truly feel what love is. What is goodness? When you have been deeply hurt by someone, you will know the warmth and value of receiving help. And all of this is our choice. You can choose what kind of person to become. The first humans in the world to make a choice were Adam and Eve. Humans think of Adam and Eve as representatives of the fallen, but this is not the truth. God said, you think everything in the world originates from me, including Adam and Eve, if they are representatives of the fallen. Then what does that make me who created them? The fact is, Adam and Eve are the greatest events in human history. You should thank them, because they were the first to make a wrong choice, allowing the world to have more possibilities. Upon hearing this, Neil became very nervous. He said, God, you want me to write a book even if people accuse me of being a charlatan or a fraud. I am willing to do so, but if you say this now, people will accuse me of blasphemy against God. God replied, who told you there is only one way to interpret things? Who told you there can only be one voice in the world? And who told you that God can only be used for reverence? God is up and down, hot and cold, left and right. God can be revered and also be scorned. Do you think God does not laugh? Do you think God does not enjoy joking around? Do you think God lacks a sense of humor? Let me tell you, humor is something I invented. Why are you speaking to me in a refined tone? Do you think I cannot understand vulgar language? Let me tell you, you can talk to me as if you were talking to your best friend. Do you think there are things in the world that I have never heard or scenes I have never seen? Do you think I would despise one thing and favor another? Let me tell you, there is nothing that I despise. To me, there is nothing detestable. To me, everything in the world is approved by me. Let me finish telling the story of the little soul, so that you can understand more clearly. One time I said to the little soul, "You can choose to experience one of God's qualities." The little soul, upon hearing this, joyfully said, "Then I choose forgiveness." That's a bit difficult, you see. Everything I created is perfect. There is no one here who needs to be forgiven. The little soul looked incredulously, then said, "Yeah, everyone is perfect. Whom should I forgive then?" At this moment, a friendly soul stepped forward and said, "You can forgive me." Forgive you for what? When you come into the world as a human, I will come to you and do something that will require your forgiveness. What could that be? You are so perfect. What could you possibly do that would need my forgiveness? The friendly soul replied, "Oh, don't worry about that, we'll figure it out." But you are so perfect. Why would you be willing to lower your vibration to do bad things? The friendly soul answered, "Because I love you." At this point, the little soul paused for a moment, and the friendly soul continued, "You forgot, we are one. We decided together to do this. Because we understand, if you choose to be something, then in your universe there must exist the opposite of that thing or person, so that your choice can be realized. And I ask only one thing of you. Anything will do," the little soul said excitedly. The friendly soul replied, "When I strike you, when I do terrible things to you beyond your imagination. At that moment, please remember my true identity. I won't forget. When I see you again, I will remember you are perfect, just like now. I will always remember the real you." At the end of the story, God said the words the little soul said to me are my promise to you. No matter whether you are good or bad in this life, I will always remember you at your most perfect, most sacred state. But I must also ask you, my little souls, have you kept your promises to other souls? When you were misunderstood, when you were hurt, do you remember that all this is just to give you the opportunity to forgive others? When I read this part, I was very, very moved, and many images appeared in my mind. It turns out that many people in the past who have caused us dissatisfaction in life are actually keeping their promises to us. Before, I didn't understand why God allows bad people to harm others. It turns out that it is because we need the existence of negative things. Because only when evil and fear occur, we can understand what good and bravery are. Only in despair we can understand what hope is. And all the ups and downs in life are what we want to feel and experience. So strictly speaking, it is all of us allowing bad things to happen, because that way we can experience them. And precisely because these negative people and things are collectively allowed by us, so we also have the power to change them. For example, when your relationship with a colleague turns sour, if you can look at it from a different perspective, no longer seeing yourself as a victim, but instead acknowledge your own shortcomings in this relationship. This mindset will prompt you to find the root of the problem. You will adjust yourself and try to communicate. Ultimately, the tense relationship with your colleague will be relieved. For instance, in terms of health, if you often suffer from insomnia or have a chronic illness, if you no longer blame external pressures for the issue, but instead, try to improve your lifestyle, adjust your eating habits, then your health condition may gradually improve. After listening to God's examples, Neil felt something was not quite right. He said, "It's not right. I didn't choose to be hit by a truck. I didn't choose to be robbed by a criminal. And I certainly didn't choose to be beaten and bullied, but all of these things happened." God said specific living environments prompt criminals to develop a desire to steal, or feel they must steal to survive, and the root cause of creating such an environment. It is all of you who have created the consciousness that allows bullying to exist. Today you bully others. Tomorrow others will bully you, only when most of you realize what you fear is yourselves, will there be a change. There are no accidents in this world. Every event has a reason. There are no accidents in the universe. I believe what God wants to express here is not some mysterious magical power. What he says is actually the most scientific. When your perspective changes, you have the opportunity to change. And if you continue to believe that all the bad things are caused by others, then you deprive yourself of the opportunity to change it. The key point is that compared to changing the behavior of others, changing your own behavior is much easier. So, think from a different perspective. If you are currently in an unfavorable environment, you should be happy instead, because at this moment you are most likely to see the root of the problem. As long as you change yourself and pass this test, you will welcome the light. However, the true purpose of God is not to tell us how to achieve success. His purpose is for us to remember our true identity, and that is why Jesus chose to be hung on the cross back then. God said Jesus is the greatest teacher. The Jesus of that time already knew what was about to happen. He could choose to leave. Even when he was nailed to the cross, he still had the ability to stop everything at any time, but he did not do so. Why? Because Jesus was conveying to us through his suffering. Even in the most extreme pain, do not forget your divinity. Most importantly, when pain occurs, never fear, because we are all part of God. We have the power to change. After a period of time, Neil had unwavering faith in God. Now he fully believed that God was communicating with him. On this day, Neil asked God, "Is the theory of evolution correct?" God said, "With a blink of an eye he created all things in the world, but indeed, some life forms have undergone hundreds of thousands of years of evolution." So, you mean the theory of evolution is only half right? What I mean is, instead of the theory of evolution, the question you should be asking is, if I created you, then who created me? Now I am going to tell you the ultimate secret. You are my body through you. I feel all of myself, yet I am also the body of him. What? Am I hearing this correctly? Are you saying you are not God? God chuckled twice. And then said, I am God, the God as you understand. You are my children, but I am also the child of him. Wow. Can you imagine how bewildered Neil must have been at this moment? Neil said, I always thought I was talking to the real God, the God of all gods, the one at the very top. But now you are telling me, there is an existence even higher than you. I never said, I am the highest in status. That's what you assume. What you think of as forever is even longer than you imagine, and eternity surpasses the concept of forever. The concept of God has already surpassed the scope of human understanding. What we are trying to express is that unspeakable truth. Have you ever used a high-powered microscope to observe the movement of molecules? And then marveled at the whole universe there. In relation to that universe, you are like a god. On this side, God is not only telling us that God also has a God, he is also telling us, we are also gods. While making this video, I suddenly saw this clip. On October 2, 2022, a priest was driving to the church to conduct mass. Suddenly a black car rushed out, then a miracle happened. At the last moment, a pole or signpost by the road blocked the black car, allowing the black car to just fly past the priest's car. When I saw this clip, I found it incredibly unbelievable. This incident did not happen recently, it happened nearly 2.5 years ago. And I saw it while making this video? Conversations with God? Is this a coincidence? Then I remembered a sentence from the book. There are no coincidences in the universe. Perhaps in the grand scheme of things, I was destined to see this clip. What really gave me goosebumps was, this incident happened on the Catholic Memorial of the Holy Guardian Angels Day. And when we played it in slow motion, we actually saw an angel. In the end of this book, Neil said, many people want to ask God, why do people go through life and death separations? Why is there so much suffering in life? So finally God responded to us. God said, I hear your inner cries, I see your soul's quest, I know how much you long for truth. In your pain, you call out to me, hoping I can explain myself. So let's continue now. You can ask me any questions. Anything at all. I will do my best to bring you answers. I will use the entire universe to do this. You can ask a question, and then set this book aside. But you should listen, perhaps to the lyrics of the next song, maybe the content of the next article. Even the next person you meet might say something to you inadvertently, or it could be the next gentle breeze that brushes past your ear. All these devices are me. If you are willing to listen, I will speak to you. If you invite me, I will come to you, and at that time, I will tell you, I have always been here. Perhaps today this video is not me recording for everyone to see. Perhaps God is making everyone see this video through his mechanism at the end of the book. God said, "There are no coincidences in the universe." I hope this video can help everyone. If you like this video, please share it. Let more people see it. Perhaps it will change their lives. Thank you all. See you in the next video. Goodbye everyone.